wasn't one of his blood vessels yesterday. Standing by at the CME in Chicago, Steve Liesman is in the studio. Rick, the numbers, please.
And the survey says a jump to 309,000 from a awkwardly revised 294,000. I'm not sure how many states are reporting, but maybe it's close to 50 today. 309,000 is the number. Draw your own conclusions. If we look at always a week in arrears, the continuing claims, 2.78 million. It's dipping below 2.8. I'm not sure how to interpret these numbers. That's up to you. If we look at another number, second quarter, current account balance. This is basically the cousin to the trade balance. It was close to expectations, arguably actually a bit worse, inching closer to 100 billion. This is minus 98.9, a little worse than we were looking for. And our last look, which was over 100 billion, minus 106 originally reported, was carved out to about 105 billion. 270 is what I see on the yield from a technical point of view, tomorrow being a Friday. If we close under 274 in yields, I would think there's going to be continued pressure, a lot of yield curve wiggles. The 5-year, Mr. Gross was on yesterday, and he was actually a bit giddy about his long 5-year position responding the way it did. That has been the focal point of the yield curve, and I think some of the big boys have been long that maturity since a couple of Fed meetings ago. The one difference between the big boys and all these guys is they can withstand the heat in the kitchen for a long time. Back to you.
Rick, everybody remembers where they were with President Kennedy when he got shot. I was in the gym yesterday, and I went over, and the market was up 160 points, and I was watching CNBC, and the sound was off, and they kept putting other stuff, assets, purchases, blah, and then I finally saw the one that said current conditions don't dictate any, and I was flabbergasted. I mean, I really, really was flabbergasted. What was your reaction and on the floor? We haven't talked to you yet today.
I think there was a lot of surprise. I think the one guy that mostly had it right was my guest yesterday on the Santelli Exchange, Jim Bianco. He thought there was major questions, and he pointed out just the facts that if you looked at data over the last year, it hadn't improved. Steve Liesman's survey, 48 said there would be no taper. 52 said there
is something in it for you. There's something in it for you, Rick, and that is what you've been saying, that after all of this, things still aren't good. And that is your point about the jobs picture and
Well, listen, I'll be more blunt than that. I'm not bashful, Joe. I mean, I think the Wall Street Journal op-ed had it right. This strategy, 5 years in, it doesn't look like any progress is being made. They're defending a strategy.
You got to do the counterfactual.
Central bankers always say they have new tools, more complicated tools, better tools. I say, I don't buy it. Right. Don't buy any of it. Their tool is printing. And I think this time around the only difference is that the dimensions of their printing are only defined by the size of the forest of the trees that they're going to convert. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I know that he's an expert in the Depression, so he's probably going to make sure that it lasts about the same amount of time.
Liesman.
Just real quick, let's take a look at what Bernanke told us in June, and let's see if what happened yesterday is at odds with that or along with it. You make up your mind at home. Here's the statement. If the incoming data are broadly consistent with this forecast, which was not a terribly robust, but it was a better forecast, the committee currently anticipates it would be appropriate to moderate the monthly pace of purchase later this year. That's part one. Then part two, if the subsequent data remain broadly aligned with our current expectations for the economy, we would continue to reduce the pace of purchases basically through the first half of the year, ending purchases around mid-year. So he does tie it all to data. The data didn't come in especially strong. It didn't come in too badly. And Jimmy, I mean, that's what he did. Is he did put a big caveat on it. Bottom line is the market was offside. Central bank's policy or theory says the market shouldn't be offside. You should have this reaction function where.
Steve, that's the difference between us. You're looking at his words.
Just that one thing.
And I'm telling you what, you're interpreting his words better than anybody I've ever seen. You're interpreting the defense of a failed strategy.
I'm not defending it, Rick. I'm just pointing out what was said here.
Okay, you're interpreting
and then go ahead
boundaries of a pasture with no grass.
I don't think, Rick, I agree with you. I don't think it's working very well. I applaud transparency as a journalist.
Welcome to the club. You're only 3.5 years late, pal.
I mean, I think the idea makes sense, and I think the question is whether or not it's led to better policy. And I don't know that it has, in part because the Fed has had this need to expand the statement to keep everybody on board in the consensus. I can point to new lines in the statement and say, well, that one was added for Bullard, this one was added for Lockhart, and this one for that guy. I'm not sure it's the best way to make policy. And
I'm
maybe
sure there's a lot of people that have manifestos who you'd question their rationality.
I'm a little lost on that one, but maybe we don't have time to explain it.
No,
I don't need to explain it.
Did you get it, Rick?
The fact is that the explainers you're talking about,
right.
We spend all our time interpreting a statement about a strategy that's off the charts, I think untethered to reality.
Okay. Right. I just don't know what happens next, how we figure out what they're going to be doing in the next go-round, when we figure out.
Makes you and Ben on the same page. You're on the same page with a lot of us today.
Okay. Thank you.